Who are my close friends? The real ones. The ones who stick around when it matters most. Maybe the better question is, would I be close friends with myself? This series is about navigating the real, the hard, and the meaningful parts of friendship.
Fun fact, so Alyssa's uncle dated my mom when they were in middle school in some small town in Iowa, and it's just kind of funny that they lived there and now we both moved here and now we're best friends. So it's kind of it was meant to be, and we didn't know until 3 years into our friendship.
I think just our memories overall from camps and from YU and Rooted, and even when we were little, just growing up together is always be something that I'll hold on to and make me laugh. And just all of our great memories and all Jimmy's funny jokes just will never leave.
One thing that I think has always been funny in our friendship, that ever since Coleman and I have gotten married, we've always joked that Jordan and I have shared a bed longer than probably Coleman and I have shared a bed at so many camps or trips or summer camps for both of our jobs at this point. I think we always just crack up because she kind of feels like another part of our family, and I feel like I spend almost as much time as I spend with Coleman with her at this point.
I wouldn't say we ever had a ginormous argument, but we have had disagreements, but just communicating during those discussions have helped out a lot with understanding each other and where those opinions are coming from. So that has definitely helped.
We don't ever let it become a big thing when we disagree. We always come to a good solid conclusion. At the end of it, we're laughing. So
I mean, there hasn't been a super hard thing in our friendship that truly tore each other down, but learning how to be confrontational with each other, because we've gone through moments where we're yeah, you hurt my feelings, and so learning how to be able to come up to them and be hey, you hurt my feelings, this is why, and they're understanding, and then you can learn from that.
It's kind of hard sometimes because she does wrestling and I do cheer, and our schedules do not mesh very well at all, and we're always on opposite timing, and so finding time to hang out and catch up and stuff like that can be really hard, but I feel we do a good job of keeping each other updated in the moment.
One of the hard things we have to navigate is going to different schools.
Every once in a while we'll shoot each other a text or call each other, check up on each other, ask how life's going, and then showing up at YU, Rooted too, but that was when we were little guys. But we do that every once in a while, and it just helps, like we've been saying, keep each other accountable, and brings that bond closer.
Probably just that no matter what would change in our friendship, just that I truly love them and I'm devoted to them, and if it changed once, it can change again. Hopefully we can grow closer together in the future.
I would want Elizabeth to remember that she showed me how to be myself and showed me how to love who I am and help me love others, not to change for anybody.
Jordan has been somebody that has changed me in a lot of ways, but in really good ways. She's challenged me in a lot of things that I'm not naturally gifted in. We just consistently had each other, and just how special that was for that time in our lives and the different seasons we get to walk with each other through.
I don't know what I would want Justice to remember about me, but I think confidently I could move forward if we were ever not friends or not as close. I'm confident that I could tell people she is the kindest friend I've ever had. She just exudes kindness, and her actual desire is to treat everybody the way Jesus would, and she forces me to slow down, and she makes me better in that way, and so that's how I would remember my friend Justice.
Well, good evening, you guys. My name is Coleman Marion. I'm the high school pastor here, and I'm so excited that you decided to join us as we close out our Close Friends series. Can we give it up for all the friends who have been on the video this week? based on the ending of like all three of these videos, it sounds like you guys need to compliment each other more often. You're not very good at giving compliments out or receiving compliments, so be a little more kind. All right, tonight we are continuing or closing out our Close Friends series, and I want to start with a question. And it's a question I think we all can relate to in some way, and maybe a question that you can relate to right now. Have you ever had a friend that at one point in your life, they were one of your close friends, one of your best friends, and for one reason or another, you're just not as close to them as you used to be? Or maybe it's like you're so close, but the friendship, it's just really changed as time has gone by. You see, for me, in my first week of college, I was going to lunch on like Wednesday or Thursday. It's like 3 or 4 days into college. And the only friends I really had at this point were my college roommates. There are 3 other guys. I was the 4th. And we were friends, but like we didn't have all that much in common other than like we were going to the same little niche Christian school of like 150 people. And so there weren't like a ton of options out there to make for friends. So I'm like, I mean, these guys are good, but we don't have that much in common. And at lunch on the 3rd or 4th day of school, I sat down and at a table of other freshmen, and across from me sat this like 6'3", just overall big guy. And this big guy, we start talking a little bit, and we're going back and forth, talking about some of the common interests we have, like some of the similar sports that we played while we were in high school, and we weren't playing anymore now that we were in college. He was talking about his love for the Denver Broncos, while I was talking about my love for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, this was 2016. The Broncos were really good, winning Super Bowls, and the Cowboys are pretty much what the Cowboys are today. They're mediocre at best. And so he had a lot to talk about. I had less to talk about. I was studying pastoral ministry. He was studying to maybe become a missionary. But the thing that ultimately we hit it off as friends with the most was his favorite pastime was playing video games, the same way my favorite pastime was playing video games. Now, this big guy who loves the Broncos, who enjoys playing video games, his name is Devin. Yes, Devin, the guy who leads Rooted. I met... Yeah. I don't even know what you... Devi Webby. Devin is the guy, he leads Rooted. He might have led you while you were in Rooted, obviously led some of them while they were in Rooted last year. I met Devin my first week of college. And from week 1 of college on, Devin and I were best friends. Devin and I, we would hang out all the time together. We would play video games almost every single night together. In fact, it got to the point where I had a PlayStation and he had an Xbox. And this was kind of like before you could really play like across platforms very much. And so we kind of just play the same game, but not together. So while I was a broke college student, seriously broke, I went out and still bought a brand new Xbox with like my last $250 that I had. Went out, bought a brand new Xbox just so we could play games together. I took that Xbox and I left it in his dorm room connected to an extra TV that he had at his desk. And so, we just wanted to hang out as much as we could. We ended up, Devin ended up changing his major to wanting to pastoral ministry. So we made sure that all of our classes lined up so that we could help each other, if you know what I mean, through some of our college classes. We were inseparable. We just hung out all the time. The entire time through our friendship, Devin was long distance dating a girl who was a year or two younger than him named Kateri. And I had just gotten dumped, and so Devin was helping me through that. And after years of being best friends, Devin would later introduce me to an amazing, kind, beautiful woman named Justice, who I would end up dating and later on marrying. And I legitimately, Devin introduced us, and then Justice and I would talk until like midnight or something like that, and I would run up to my dorm room and I'd wake Devin up from being asleep because I had to tell him everything that happened because I was so nervous. So Devin for like 2 weeks had to stay up from like 1 to 3 in the morning while I was super nervous about things. And so Justice and I, when we started dating, just a couple months into dating, we kind of came at this crossroads when it came to Devin. Justice looked at me and she said, listen, I like Devin, but I don't know if I want to hang out with him that often. And I was sitting there, we were in the car together, and I'm the type of person that likes to, I don't say anything straight up. I don't want confrontation. I'll beat around the bush just a little bit. This is probably the most straight up thing I've ever said to Justice my entire life. I looked at her and I said, Devin is my best friend. I said something like this. It probably wasn't as tough as I'm making it sound. But Devin is my best friend, and he has been around for a long time. And if I have to choose between Devin or you, it's going to be him. And so you kind of have to, there's something you got to figure out. And obviously she did, because we ended up getting married. Justice, that's a true story, right? True story? I think she did a thumbs up. I can't tell. These lights are bright. All right, so after years had passed, years had gone by, Devin and I were no longer roommates because he married that girl who he was long distance dating, and apparently when you get married, your best friend can no longer be your roommate. And we went from spending almost every single moment together to like playing video games some nights and seeing each other at work because, well, now we both worked at Relevant full time, so like this is great. We can still work together, we can still play some games, and slowly we played games less and less. And then I got married, and things just got more and more complicated between me and Devin in our friendship. And then Rooted started blowing up with middle schoolers, and YU was still trying to rebuild coming out of COVID. And there were just things that were piling on top of each other one by one by one that I ended up getting really upset with Devin for. And in return, Devin got really upset with me. And all of a sudden, we were butting heads at work a whole lot. We didn't get along. We didn't want to be friends. And we were barely talking to each other. And we were kind of okay with it. And like neither one of us, like we both knew kind of what the issue was, but neither one of us were going to talk about it. And so now one of my close friends, my best friend, we were sitting there angry at each other, hardly talking to each other. If you know where Devin and I sit in the office, it's the same desk. We look at each other legitimately all day. He sits right across from me. Didn't want to look at him, didn't want to talk to him unless I had to. And eventually it came down to what are we going to do? And we were just going to ignore it seemed like. But everything changed. One conversation changed everything. Devin texted me and he invited me over while Kateri was at work one day. And we sat down in his living room and he just looked at me and said, dude, what is up with us? He's like, what is up? Like, we have been best friends for so long and all of a sudden, like, we can hardly even look at each other. And it probably took like 2.5 minutes before both Devin and I are crying in his living room. And we're sitting there and we're like, you know what? Our friendship, it matters so much to both of us. We need to find a way to get through this. And our decision was not to go in different directions, but our decision was we need to redefine what our friendship looks like. Because once you get married, you have a built-in best friend. Kateri was Devin's best friend and still is Devin's best friend. Justice was and still is my best friend. And so we had to redefine what our friendship was going to look like going forward and made some commitments to each other as friends. So what's the point of this story? Well, in this series, we're talking about what it means to be close friends. But one thing I think we have to consider in the conversation is this. What do we do when it's time to change a friendship or when it's time to unfriend a close friend? How do we handle it when friendships drift apart or simply move in different directions? Now, I think you and I can both agree that there are times where friendships just sort of make sense, that they change and you're no longer friends, and it's not that big of a deal. Things like maybe you change class schedules and all of a sudden it's like, you know what, they're in like all the AP classes and I'm just trying to get through like the grade behind me classes. Like we're just different, like and all of a sudden our friendship has changed, and that's okay. Maybe you're like, well, I switched schools and I was really close to them because I saw them every day at school, but now that I changed schools, you know, it just doesn't make sense for us to be friends. Or maybe you're like, it made a lot of sense when we played that sport together, but I'm not into that anymore. And they're really into it and they're really good at it, and it just makes sense that our friendship would ultimately change. Changes like this, they can be difficult, but eventually they get easier to cope with because they just make sense. And you have a reason that you can explain to someone when they ask you why you and so aren't so close anymore. I mean, think of it like this. You are this blue chair. You are your own unique person. And you have the ability to control who you choose to be close to and who you allow to be close to you. And your close friends, they're represented by these yellow chairs here. These are your closest friends. These are the ones that when you have like boyfriend or girlfriend issues, these are the ones you're texting or you're calling. When you're looking to hang out for the weekend, these are the ones that you're going to first. When you have a sporting event, these are the ones who are showing up and cheering as loud as they can. And when they have a sporting event, you are showing up to theirs too. These are the people who have influence in your life. These people are incredibly important to you. And then on the outside, you have your friends, these orange chairs. And your friends, they are important too. Like these are the people that maybe you talk to at that one class that you guys have together. Like we're friends, we talk, we get along. Maybe it's the people that you sit with at your lunch table. And it's not like I sit with a couple of my close friends at my lunch table, but like the other 12 people at my lunch table, like we're friends, but I don't really go to them with all these things in my life. Or maybe it's the people that you're looking for in a student section at a football game. Like I'll look for them because I know I can hang out with them, but I'm not going to ask them for support or for advice on what's going on in my life. Now you need to know, this illustration doesn't mean you can only have two close friends. And it doesn't mean you can only have two friends. You can have more close friends, you can have more friends, you can have less close friends, you can have less friends. This is a good illustration, it's not a perfect one. So something small might come between you and another friend where something needs to change. And oftentimes when you change classes or you get different interests, these close friends, the yellow chairs, when little things like that happen, when you change schedules, when lunches change or whatever, those people, they stick by your side because they are your close friends. They are your ride or dies. They're the one that you are reaching out to all the time. There are other times for you to hang out with these close friends. But sometimes the people on the outside, sometimes those change. And take it from me. As someone who I sat with the same group of guys for 2 years in high school, junior and senior year, the exact same group of guys, we added one guy halfway through junior year. Every single day we talked as if we were all super close friends. But I had one guy at that table who I knew was one of my close friends. The other ones were friends. And I'm telling you, the guys at my lunch table, I graduated high school. I have not seen or heard from them since the day I walked across the stage and got my diploma. Those are friends. Life changed, and ultimately, when life changed, our friendships did. And when these friends, when they get removed, they also get replaced. Sometimes it's easy to remove them, and it's also just as easy to replace them. And removing them, it might hurt a little bit. You might start thinking about, I wonder what happened to them. Or you might see them on Instagram and be like, oh, I'm glad that's going. But ultimately, they're not. It's not too difficult. It's something you can cope with. But what about your close friends? What happens when you and a close friend had a difference in opinions about something that you both feel really, really strongly about? And you care about it so much that you're not willing to give in on it, and they care about it so much that they're not willing to give in on it. And so what happened? The friendship changed. Maybe you have a friend who you were really close to, and then they hurt you with what they said or what they did to you. Or maybe you were the close friend that hurt someone with your words or your actions. And what happened? The friendship changed. Maybe you had this really close friend who started to surround themselves with the wrong people. And you knew right away, listen, something's got to change. They can't hang out with those people because they're starting to make some decisions that aren't very wise. And it's ultimately tempting me to make some of these unwise decisions too. And so I need to change the friendship before something else changes in my life. What happens when something big comes up and starts to separate you from one of your close friends? Well, let's see what the writers of Scripture have to say about this. You see, in the New Testament, the first 4 books are the account of Jesus' life when he lived here on earth. You see, Jesus, he after he no longer walked on earth, the book of Acts tells us what happened right after that. So it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Those are the stories of Jesus' life, the accounts of Jesus' life. And then Acts is quickly followed. It tells us what happened immediately after that. It's like the entire history of the early church. In fact, we are gathered here right now as a church because of what the ordinary men and women started back then. And all of this is recorded in the book of Acts. With Jesus gone, his closest followers, known as his disciples, began traveling to different places and sharing the life-changing message of Jesus. In the passage we're going to look at today, we're going to hear from three guys. One is Paul, one is Barnabas, and one is John Mark. You see, Paul, who is one of the greatest Christian influencers of all time, we talk about Paul all the time. Anytime you hear me talk about the guy named Paul, we're talking about the same guy. He ended up writing over half of what we now call the New Testament. He was a really great guy. And his close friend, his name was Barnabas. Barnabas was a huge encouragement to the people around him. You might know someone who's like Barnabas, someone who's always positive, someone who's always trying to build you up. That type of person, like Barnabas was that way. In fact, they changed his name to Barnabas because Barnabas meant the encourager. And so he was known for being super encouraging to people. In fact, the reason why Paul even had the position that he had to write what we now call majority of the New Testament is because Barnabas was so encouraging to Paul to step into this role. And what you have to know is Paul and Barnabas, best friends. Very close friends. Like they were always hanging out together. They were doing things together, and they end up going on what is called a missionary journey, where they go and they plant a whole bunch of churches while they're just traveling through different towns. They plant these churches all along the road, and ultimately, after they've gone on this first missionary journey, they get to this point of hanging out with a guy named John Mark. And John Mark is actually Barnabas' cousin, and the eventual writer of the Gospel of Mark and of the New Testament. And these three guys are about to disagree on something big. It says, sometime later, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let us go back and visit the believers in all the towns where we preach the word of the Lord and see how they are doing." Barnabas wanted to take John, also called Mark, with them. But Paul did not think it was wise to take him because he deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in their work. So Paul and Barnabas were friends that were doing the same important work together. They were revealing Jesus to people and establishing churches while they traveled. And they decided, let's go back. Let's retrace our steps and let's go back and check on how some of those churches are doing. But that's when the problem started. See, the first one was Barnabas wanted to bring John Mark, who apparently ditched them last time that they went on this kind of trip together. And because of that, Paul wasn't so sure about bringing John Mark. He was like, I don't know if I can trust this guy. He ditched us once. I don't really trust him. I don't even think I can count on him. And what happens next is a thing that I think we can learn from the most. Here's what happened. They had a sharp disagreement, and they, Paul and Barnabas, parted company. Barnabas took Mark and sailed for Cyprus, but Paul chose Silas and left, commended by the believers to the grace of the Lord. He went to Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. So Paul had an issue. His close friend really cared about something, and he had a differing opinion from Paul. Now, to you and to me, this may seem like something really, really small. Like, okay, they just got a differing opinion. You got to get along with people who have a different opinion than you. That's true. But this was a really big deal because what they were doing required a tight-knit community of people who trusted one another. These missionary journeys were incredibly important to Paul and incredibly important to Barnabas. They had to trust everybody who was with them, and that trust was broken between John Mark and Paul. Barnabas wanted to take him because he was like, I think he can be a big contributor. And Paul said no. So what did Paul do? Paul made a tough decision. He removed Barnabas from his close friends, and they went their separate ways. In fact, there's nowhere in Scripture or any other reliable historical document that makes us think that Paul and Barnabas ever talked and made up for this moment. But there's a key here that I think we all need to make note of in this friendship split. There is nothing, not a single thing that suggests that Paul and Barnabas yelled at each other, cussed at each other, went their separate ways, and then bashed each other all over social media. In fact, later on in Scripture, Paul speaks extremely highly of his former friend in 1 Corinthians. And then in a different passage in 2 Timothy, Paul talks about how he and John Mark eventually made up for their differences. You see, when they decided to part ways, when they decided to no longer be close friends, they did so respectfully. If I were to boil all this down to one point, it would be this. Sometimes having the right close friends means walking away from the wrong friends. Let's use the chairs. See, when you have to remove friends The ones who are on the outside, while it's not ever fun, there's normally like a normal and rational explanation for it. When you have to take somebody from being one of your friends and just take them out, they're no longer one of your friends, like it hurts, but it makes sense. And my encouragement to you would be, if you have to leave one of the people that you just consider one of your friends, don't lose sleep over it. This is going to happen for the rest of your life. It's not fun. It's not fun to lose these kind of friends, but it is needed. And sometimes losing one of these friends can strengthen the relationship you have with your close friends. But what happens when you need to remove a close friend? What happens when you need to do what Paul did? What about when you have to remove someone who for the past few years has been one of your biggest supporters, one of your biggest friends, like the best friend you've ever had? Well, here's my 3 tips for this type of situation. This is what I would say. If you need to remove one of your close friends, this is what I would do. Step 1 is remove quickly. Now let me put a disclaimer on this first. This works in some situations, but not all right away. There are times when you don't need to remove a close friend, you just need to have a difficult conversation with them. The same way that Devin and I decided, you know what, we gotta have this difficult conversation so that we can continue being friends. We didn't have to remove quickly. We just needed to redefine what friendship looked like for us. Sometimes you just need to have a difficult conversation, but there are times where maybe you've tried to have a difficult conversation, or you can just tell deep down that it is time for this person to go. It is time for this person to no longer have influence in my life. We can no longer be close friends. My encouragement for you, when you know without a shadow of a doubt that it is time for this to happen, you need to remove them quickly. The second step follows quickly after this. Remove respectfully. When you remove one of your close friends, do not go and post about them on social media. Do not go to your other close friends or even just your friends or even just people you don't even know and start talking poorly about them. You need to talk highly about your former close friends. The same way that Paul so spoke highly of Barnabas later on in his life. You need to remove quickly, remove respectfully, and then replace intentionally. And the exact opposite of remove quickly, you need to be intentional about who you are replacing these people with. If you just remove people who are your close friends quickly and replace them quickly, guess what's going to happen? You're going to remove them quickly again too. I mean, think about it for a second. We all know people, and if you don't know people, you might be the person. We all know people whose close friends or the people that they seem really tight with seem to change every 6 months. I've got to tell you something. If I think that your close friends change every 6 months, there are 2 things that I know about you right away. First, I know that your close friends are not that close of close friends. There is no way you can have close friends that switch out every 6 months or so. It takes time. It takes time to build close, authentic friendships with people. And if they're just being replaced every 6 months, you're not building that kind of friendship with people. And the second thing I know about you, if your friends change every 6 months, is your friends, and this is a little bit of tough love, but you got to hear it. Your friends, they're not the problem. If you are replacing your closest friends every 6 months or every year, your friends aren't the problem. You are probably the problem. You need to look at yourself and say, how am I intentionally replacing my close friends? Because I would say you're not doing it intentionally at all. You're just quickly replacing and quickly removing and quickly replacing them over and over and over again. But if you get to the point where you've removed a close friend and you're like, I want to intentionally replace my friend with someone who I know is going to be a good close friend, someone who I can rely on, who I can really build an authentic friendship with, and you're like, but what does that person look like? Then I would encourage you to go back and listen to the last 2 weeks of this sermon series where we talked about what close friends look like and what it means to be a close friend. And I want to end with this. This form of friendship is not something that is native or easy for any of us. We can all struggle with this. In fact, friendships like this they're based in Scripture, and they're based in what we believe as followers of Jesus. So followers of Jesus in the room, if you would consider yourself a follower of Jesus, my question for you is, do you have the right close friends? And if not, what do you need to do next? Now, for those of you who are in the room who have not made the decision to put your faith in Jesus by asking him to be the forgiver of your sins and the leader of your life, first, I understand that this type of friendship is going to seem extremely foreign to you, and that's okay. But I have a very different question for you. My hope is as you follow along in this series, or even if this is your first time with us, that you would look at this and say, yes, I want that kind of friendship. I want the kind of friends who I can rely on. I want the kind of friends who are making wise decisions. I want the kind of friends who have their future in mind and my future in mind. I want good, close friends. Well, my question for you has nothing to do with your friends, and seemingly has nothing to do with this series at all. My question for you has to do with your faith. If you feel like you want all those things out of your friendships, then my question for you is, do you want to put your faith in Jesus by asking him to be the forgiver of your sins and the leader of your life? Because that is the first step into having true and authentic close friends. And if you're in this room tonight and you're like, yes, I want to take that first step into having the right close friends, I'm going to give you that opportunity after we sing a worship song together. See, at YU, we believe that worship is extremely important. And we believe it's extremely important because high school is loud, and worship turns the volume down so that students can tune their hearts to God. And when we sing as one voice, we anchor our identity in Jesus instead of our grades, instead of our teams, and instead of our opinions. And worship isn't just songs. Worship is formation. It's choosing gratitude over gossip, surrender over stress, purpose over pressure, and standing shoulder to shoulder across grades reminds us that I am not alone. It reminds us that I belong here and that I belong to God. Now, the truth is at YU, we don't oftentimes get the opportunity to have a live band. And so this might feel a little bit different to you when we do worship on the screen like this, but the meaning remains the same. And I would encourage you to stand up and worship with us in just a moment. So let's take a few minutes to worship together. We're going to worship our holy creator God together, and we're going to invite his spirit into this place. Let's sing together.